You just completed a multiple-week training program onboarding new bank tellers. You receive a call from a concerned manager stating that one of their new hires and your former participant is struggling to balance their drawer. I don't understand. They just finished their training with you. Don't you cover this in training? Maybe it's not this specific training. Perhaps it's system-based, technical, or even leadership, soft skills training. No matter the subject of the training, participants are expected to be able to apply what they learn on the job, better known as a transfer of training. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jennifer Mitchell-Early. I help individuals and teams achieve organizational and personal success. Okay, let's get into it. One of the basic tenets of people who attend, plan, and sponsor educational programs is that what has been learned is something that participants can use after the program is completed, i.e., that the knowledge and skills acquired during training are applied to a targeted job or role. Therefore, it's safe to say that the transfer of training doesn't just happen because you're rolling out training. Instead, instructional designers, program planners, and/or instructors need to provide opportunities for learners to integrate what they've learned back into their personal work and/or public lives. The transfer of training is often referred to as the so what or now what phase of training. So what does this all mean, and how can what was learned be applicable to my situation? That's the question. This is a critical component of the development process, and one that I personally believe should be accounted for in all educational programs for adults, including public lecture series, recreational educational programs, and even weekend retreats for spiritual renewal or church programs. This aligns with adult learning principles, which state that adult learners are focused on achieving goals. Adults enter the learning process focused on results. They need to know how the information will help them achieve their goals, whether personal or professional. When designing programs, this should be kept in mind so that learners or participants are given the information and tools necessary to help them reach their goals. Adult learners need to know that the information is relevant. The transfer of training, or now what, directly correlates with the adult learner's need to understand the short and long-term benefits of attending training, engaging content in a way that allows them to retain and apply what they learn as it relates to their goals, role, job, or hobbies. And adult learners are practical. They learn quickly and remember what they learn when they can turn around and apply that knowledge to their role. Assisting people to make changes is what transfer of learning is all about. Changes in themselves, other people, practices, organizations, and/or society, akin to change management, which we'll go into depth about in another video. Although most training programs focus on the learning of individuals, it's not the sole responsibility of the instructional designer or instructor alone to ensure the transfer of training. Taking a step back and looking at the big picture concerning the transfer of training, it's important to note that some of what has been learned cannot be applied unless changes are also made in current practices, organizations, and/or society, especially when what is learned has to be applied primarily in a work or other organizational setting and/or depends on others having to agree to or also make those changes. For example, a teacher may want to try using some cooperative learning strategies and self-directed learning projects, but encounters a stumbling block in their department chair or principal that voice strong opposition. They claim that these kinds of learning techniques, especially for science and math education, are a waste of good teaching time. I'm curious, for the transitioning teachers that follow me, is this still the case? What options do teachers have to present educational material in exciting and engaging ways, thus ensuring the transfer of learning? Please comment below. I'd love to read those responses. A more global example is that of the current proliferation and simultaneous assault on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, on the importance of cultural diversity in corporations, governmental bodies, and educational institutions by and for organizations in which senior management, board members, and high-level government officials are predominantly heterosexual white men. There are many reasons why training participants either do or do not apply what they have learned as a result of attending training programs. According to Rosemary Caffarella, author of Planning Programs for Adult Learners, there are 6 key influencing factors as to why people do or do not apply what they learn. For example, 1, program participants. Participants bring to educational programs a set of personal characteristics, experiences, attitudes, and values. These influence both what they learn and whether they can and want to apply what they have learned to their personal, work, and or public lives. 2, program design and execution. Program planners can include, as part of designing and conducting educational programs, strategies for the transfer of training. These strategies can be implemented before, during, and after the program has been completed. 3, program content. The knowledge, skills, and or attitudes that are addressed through the program activities make up the program content. Program participants may or may not learn this material, either because they choose not to or because the program instructors did not teach what they said they would teach, or both. 4, change required to apply the learning. The nature of the changes required in people, professional practices, organizations, communities, and or society to apply the learning describes the scope, depth, and enduring consequences of those changes. It also takes into account the complexity of the change process and who is responsible for making the changes. 5, organizational context. The organizational context consists of people, structure, and cultural environment of an organization, and it either supports or inhibits the transfer of learning. The context includes the value the organization places on continuous learning and development and the concrete support it gives to educational programs. And finally, 6, community societal forces. The social, economic, and political conditions that exist in a specific community or society in general also plays a role. This factor includes support by key leaders and groups in the community, region, and or international arena. These key 6 factors can be barriers or enhancers to the transfer of learning process, but not all of them come into play for every educational program. The larger and more complex the program's scope and goals, the larger the number of people affected, the greater the magnitude of the changes, and the less control over organizational and societal forces, the more difficult the transfer of learning process becomes. Take, for example, an organization-wide training program that has been initiated on diversity in the workplace. The major goals of the program are 1, to have all employees of the organization examine their own attitudes and values related to diversity issues in the workplace. 2, create a work environment where people of different backgrounds, experiences, perspectives, and talents can work together productively and that nurtures and promotes diversity. 3, increase the use of inclusive language within job postings, internal communications, and external communications. And 4, to increase the number and percentage of women, people of color, or otherwise underrepresented people within the organization. The program is envisioned as a 2-year intensive effort and is supported by both the Chief Executive Officer and the board. So applicable factors that influence the transfer of training from the 6 that we previously noted are program participants, program design and execution, program content, changes required to apply learning, organizational context, and community and societal forces. Instructional designers, program planners, and instructors have varying levels of control as it relates to the factors that influence the transfer of learning. Generally speaking, from a big picture perspective, they have the most control over program design and execution, followed by program participants and program context, followed by organizational context and changes required to apply learning, down to the community societal forces for which they have the least control. Since the one factor that almost all program planners have the greatest decision-making power over is the design and execution of the program, it is imperative that planners consider planning for the transfer of learning and training during the development process. If you're a current learning and development professional or a change management practitioner, what are your thoughts and experiences concerning planning for the transfer of learning or training, or for the adoption of the change? Leave your comments below. If you found this video valuable, please hit the like button, hit that thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I upload new content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.